The goal is to build the next great neighborhood in Fayetteville.
What are the biggest challenges?
The spaces between the buildings are what really matter over the long term for an asset like that.
Why do you think that one didn't work?
If I had it all to do over again, we would have still done commercial, but we would have had it in a separate building.
Strategic focus on the 4 main downtowns here. Why?
We're either going to be building where there's already a meaningful place, or we're going to be building at the scale that we can create a meaningful place.
We want to give a special thanks to our presenting sponsor, Greenwood Gerhardt. Starting with my parents, for years, they've helped my family feel at peace by having a team we can trust build our finances for the future. One thing I love about Greenwood Gerhardt is how directly involved the team is in the holistic planning of our finances. We can regularly check in with our advisor and know that they see the full picture of our family, even between generations. I know they're adding immense value to so many lives here in Northwest Arkansas. And to learn more about Greenwood Gerhardt and their suite of services, you can visit their website at greenwoodgerhardt.com or hit the link in the show description. Now, let's dive into the episode.
Afternoon, Jeremy.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for coming on here with me and Nick. And we're right in the middle of South Yard, the kind of latest activated development. I mean, I guess, I don't know, maybe Rogers is more latest than this, but
Yeah.
make an argument
Yeah.
one way or the other. But I want you to kind of go through everything that y'all do. But I think one thing that I admire so much about you and y'all in general is just how much you stay to the core of who you are. And I believe on your website, it's like developing for health and culture. All the language you have, but now you're at such large scale. And I'm curious how you'd say that you do that still today. I think it's maybe easier when you're smaller and you're kind of just doing a few things.
Yeah.
But I think you keep the identity there at a large scale here across the board.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me first. And, I mean, the truth is we're still figuring it out, right? I mean, but, I think the answer to the question is it's all about culture, and having a strong culture and being true to our values. And so even though like, I don't think of us as big scale, and a lot of people look at us that way, because we are, we've got, I guess for developers in Northwest Arkansas, we are big scale, but we don't really act that way and we don't really feel that way because we're just, a group of folks here working in an office together in Fayetteville. But I think the answer is, over the years, it's certainly evolved, but very early on, really starting with it kind of, our culture and our values were birthed when we did Eco Modern Flats. And, that's kind of a whole story to itself. But we discovered kind of who we wanted to be as a development company, and through that process. And again, even though some of the specifics and the language has evolved and morphed some over time, like we've stayed true to that, and we hire people who align with those values, and we work with partners and consultants who align with those values. And so that's really what it's about. The only way that we can stay true to that is because, it is most importantly because the people that are on our team, we're all values aligned and focused on the same things. And, a lot of people talk about multiple bottom line. It's hard, but that's what we're trying to do. And everybody understands that, and everybody's working towards that. And, we try to find not just, I talked about consultants and partners, but also capital partners, that also understand what we're trying to do and accomplish. And so for the most part, that allows us to, keep doing the types of things that we want to do.
Yeah. Talk about Eco, like what was that 2010?
It was 2000. Yeah. We bought it in 2010. So 16 years ago.
Apartment remodel.
Yeah.
In downtown Fayetteville.
Yeah.
I guess.
Talk
about that and figuring out who you are through that deal.
Yeah, absolutely. The crazy short nutshell of pre-Eco for me was, studied construction in college, always had a desire and, or desire and design bent. But then spent the early part of my career in brokerage, and then in property management. And Eco was the first time where we were able to put all of those pieces of construction, design, and our brokerage and property management pieces together as a principal.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of your classic, like, we partner with someone that we had worked for in the past and done deals for them as a agent or whatever you want to call it. And classic deal where, we found an opportunity and we asked them if they'd be the money, and we'll do the equity or sweat equity. And they said yes. And really went into that thing, knowing that it was in a really good strategic location, but that area was very emerging back then. And, felt like because of where the market was at that time, there was, it was kind of at the bottom of the recession, and felt like there was just opportunity, just frankly, just on paper, right? You just look at, and we understood the apartment business and felt like there was a need for apartments in downtown. I was 30-ish and, had my own experience of living, buying a house. I was a real estate agent, so as soon as I could afford it, I bought a new house and, lived in a 4-bedroom house basically by myself in a suburb, not a suburb, but, in a subdivision. And, learned the pros and cons of that, type of lifestyle, and felt like there was a need for, a place for young professionals to live in downtown Fayetteville. If you could afford a historic home or a condo, then you'd have a place. But I couldn't, and a lot of other, professionals certainly couldn't. And the only other really alternative was just old apartments that weren't very nice. And so the very simple play was just your classic value add. Like, let's just fluff and buff this thing, and people want to live there. But as we dug into it, literally and figuratively, we found, just all these opportunities that, and the biggest one was utility cost. I mean, the utility, I forget the exact numbers, but something, the average rent there was something like $475, $470, something like that. And like close to 200 of that was master metered. And so utilities were included. So close to $200 of that was just getting, down to the bottom line. So it's no wonder why we're able to pick it up so cheap. And I realized pretty quickly the way to fix this thing is we got energy efficiency. And to be totally transparent, that did not come out of any amount of altruistic motivation at all at the beginning. It was just like, this is how you make the math work. But that sent us down this path. And I'm just old enough that like sustainability was not a part of my construction management, training. Like it was green was too green back then. And so I just kind of learned on the fly. I had some friends that had been in the construction and design business that really had a focus on health and sustainability. And so it just started this series of things. And we decided to pursue LEED certification, which then started teaching us about health and indoor air quality and all of these things. In particularly the indoor air quality one resonated with me because I grew up with pretty severe allergies and asthma. Obviously living in Arkansas, some amount of that was just environmental, but I believe that there were parts of it that were also very much the unhealthy indoor environments that I lived in. And so once this the indoor air quality thing was a big light bulb for me, and I realized, okay, like for years, my brokerage days, we sold a lot of homes to first-time home buyers, and even in our property management days, you'd show someone an apartment and had a fresh coat of paint and nice new carpet. And I came to realize that's VOCs and formaldehyde and all these things, like these new smells that are actually really toxic, And so when I realized that, I was like, okay, well, we're not going to be that type of developer. We're not going to just throw, fresh coat of paint and carpet in something that's not going to be healthy for people. And so, again, that was the spark that lit for me personally, and then for our company and culture, that we had to weave in health, sustainability, and a sense of community. And the sense of community piece goes back to my experience of buying a 4-bedroom home in a cul-de-sac subdivision and living there for a long time, and like having to like awkwardly try to introduce myself to my neighbors because it wasn't designed for that, and. Yeah. You go in you pull in your garage and you shut the garage, and if you go outside, it's in a 6-foot privacy fence, and you don't even, it's just not conducive. And I'm not a extrovert by nature. And so I felt like that and some of our experience managing apartments, older apartments that are what I would, call, garden style apartments, kind of the same thing. Like literally, the whole site plan, the whole architectural plan is centered around how do you get someone to park as close to their door as they possibly can. And so you don't have opportunities for interaction with neighbors. And so that was the thesis that we put together that led all through the strategy of eco, which was, again, it was health focused, community focused, and then energy efficiency and water and water conservation. So that was kind of the big moment for us. And of course, LEED certification, and then led to that being a really big part of everything that we've done since, and a real big focus for, 10 plus years on LEED specifically.
Yeah. Let's talk about the end of that project. How did it work out?
It was great. We ended up winning the USGBC's global award for, multifamily project of the year. And it was just wild because, we, ended up on stage with Amazon World Headquarters types, projects. And we got this little value add apartment project in Fayetteville, Arkansas. So it was pretty wild. But yeah, I mean, we still own and manage it to this day. And it's just really cool. The other big thing that has taught me that to this day is at the center of everything that we do is that the spaces between the buildings are what really matter over the long term for an asset like that. Like, I'm not to discount all the building science and health that happens on the inside, but when we think about long term value, and of course everybody talks about placemaking, but we talk about the spaces between the buildings because the buildings themselves are really, really important. But that is such a good example of the buildings were there, we completely gutted and reimagined those buildings, but at the end of the day, the box was still the box. It was just a healthier box. But what we really did there, and tons of credit to our partners and Modus and Stuart Fulbright who did that project with us, was we totally reimagined the spaces between the buildings. And we have residents that have lived there and for a long time, a lot longer than you normally see people live in apartments. And I think so much of that is because the community, the actual community creation that happens because the spaces outside of the apartment are conducive to hanging out with other people.
And how much value is that as someone who holds the asset still? Like retention for your
for your residents? Yeah, it's huge. Like just about any business, right? Customer acquisition is one of the most expensive things, and that's certainly true in apartments because when somebody moves out of an apartment, typically, you've got a decent amount. Not only do you have to acquire the new customer, but you got to renovate or at minimum you're cleaning and painting, and so keeping that customer is very, very important.
Well, I want to go back to the beginning before we keep going forward. So you're from Arkansas.
Yep.
And then construction management from JBU, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, and talk about getting into just like the real estate industry in general, because I think everyone may want to know, like, how do you become, I don't even think there was anything like the job title developer probably didn't even exist. It did not exist here then. And so I don't even think there was like an aspiration, is what I'm assuming on your end, probably to do what you do.
Yeah. So born and raised in North Central Arkansas, I came over here to John Brown to go to school. I actually thought I wanted to be an architect. There was that was actually in the catalog. If you're old enough to know what an actual catalog is at a college where they used to have all the degrees and the classes. And I get over there and I'm like, I obviously wasn't enrolled yet, but I was like in these, kind of whatever, interviews, kind of finalizing where I was going to go to school, and found out that they didn't have architecture anymore, but they had this thing called construction management. And so I just decided, okay, I felt like I was supposed to go to school there. So that's what I pursued. And I loved it. There are a lot of things I liked about it, but at the same time, by the time I got out of school, I kind of knew, I don't think that program for the most part prepares you to do one of three things. Go to work for a large construction company, commercial construction company, kind of start your own residential home building type company, or a lot of, not a lot, but, some of the folks that go through there are already in family businesses and they're going to, learn how to run their family construction business. I was none of those things. I worked for Manhattan Construction out of Tulsa for a couple of years while I was in school, learned a lot, loved it. But I had already decided that I didn't want to just go straight into the commercial construction industry. It just didn't feel like it was a culture fit for me and, what I wanted to do. So when I got out of school, I honestly wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And Seth Mims, who's my partner now, I had met, and he's like, "Hey, you should think about real estate." And I didn't even know real estate was a career. I grew up in small town Arkansas. The only realtor I knew was like my aunt, who was a realtor because she was a school teacher and it gave her something to do in the summer. So I was like, my first thought is like, I've got a college degree. Why would I be a real estate agent? But ultimately I decided, what the heck, let's pursue it and see what happens. And started working with Seth and we built, this small boutique real estate brokerage called Mi Casa Real Estate that focused on Spanish-speaking customers in Springdale and all of Northwest Arkansas, but specifically in Springdale and Rogers.
What year was that?
That was 2002.
Okay.
And we, like a lot of people back then, we rode the wave of, crazy market from 2002 to about 2006. And kind of during that time, I started getting really interested in the investment / business side versus just the sales side of the business. And we had some clients or customers that had some small scale properties that they needed property managed too. And so we just kind of incrementally were getting into property management. And I saw that as a way to diversify our revenue stream and a need that frankly nobody was really serving. I mean, there's Lindsay that of course, was by far the biggest apartment, property manager for their own account, but there really wasn't anybody that was really serving their customer or kind of differentiating themselves. There's just a lot of very small property management shops. And then when the wheels fell off the bus, late 2006, early 2007, and everybody's, including our brokerage, business went, just fell apart. Luckily we had some property management business to fall back on. It wasn't a lot then, but we kind of were in the right place at the right time and ended up being kind of the go-to guys for a lot of local banks or investors that they started getting deals handed back to them, didn't know what to do with it. And we had learned how to reposition, either physically reposition or even just, through operations and marketing, reposition these assets. And so we kind of, our property management business grew really fast. And a big part of that was apartment projects in Fayetteville that we took over for several local banks and even the FDIC at one point. And so we kind of learned the apartment business and, the student apartment business. Now that wasn't purpose-built student, and that, it's very different than what we have now with purpose-built students. These were just apartment complexes that were full of students, and just learned a ton. So that's kind of, I call those my wax on, wax off days. There was about, 7 or 8 years where just, we were selling a house a day. So like 300 plus transactions a year, helping people, get financing, buy a home, sell a home. And then kind of the same thing on the apartment side, and just lots and lots of transactions, lots of understanding of, why people buy a home, why they want to move, understanding a lot of bad development decisions or bad asset management decisions that we saw when people started getting stuff back, and, construction projects that were halfway through or people ran out of money, or just all these different things that happened back then to a whole lot of people. And so we kind of got thrown into the deep end of the pool and had to learn to swim and learned a lot of things from it. So, that really uniquely prepared us. I didn't go learn real estate finance in school, or I didn't come to the industry that way. I just came through many different, the major different aspects that it takes. And frankly, had to self-teach, or self-taught when it comes to real estate finance and development. Like literally, I bought the book on real estate development from the ULI bookstore, I was like, okay, what does this mean? What the hell is a pro forma and how does it work?
What I mean, so yeah, talk about like at the time. I mean, there were no real development shops here, and I think even now it's like there's not that many. And I don't know how many some of these major markets have, but like, I mean, was there anyone at all like then?
No, I don't think so. I mean, there's some of the legacy people and or families, that did, apartments at a big scale or did, kind of big box retail or retail. I mean, which some of those, families and folks are still around, but there was no, I mean, they kind of had their niche and they did their thing. But yeah, no, there was nobody. Now there were a lot of paper developers back in those days, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and anybody could build a home and anybody could develop a subdivision. But as far as like the type of development that we do or, vertical development, there really wasn't. I mean, and it's only been, you think about it, it's really only been over the past, not even quite 10 years, that there's even been outside development, that's coming in and doing stuff. It's been unique. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that we had to convince capital to come look at Northwest Arkansas. Which, now is a completely different story.
Well, let's go post eco. So you talked about what everything that eco meant for you and Seth, kind of building the company. What happened next? What was the wind in the sails? Or like, I mean, it's.
Well, we took a bit of an atypical approach after eco. One of the things that eco taught us, one of the things we discovered was we designed and built that for young professionals. But what happened was we started getting some students showing up, with nice cars and parents, wanting to rent apartments for them, and we're like, well, who are these people? And so we quickly discovered like there's clearly a market that isn't being met. Of course, the university's rapidly growing too, and we realized that there was a real need for student housing. And again, the combination of our brokerage, apartment knowledge allowed us to begin to kind of see some opportunities, put some things together that were way bigger developments than we could have ever accomplished, or executed on our own. But we put together some opportunities, put together some early designs and entitlements, and went out and found partners, with bigger pockets and more expertise than we did. And we did a series of what are now called, purpose-built student housing projects in and around downtown or campus adjacent. I guess we were the first guys to do, the campus adjacent stuff. And we did a series of 3 or 4 or 5 deals, over a few years. And that was kind of this phase where I say we took an atypical approach because we did this first deal. It was a 50-50, like sweat equity type deal at Eco. And then we jumped straight into these deals that we frankly had no business being in from a experience or capital standpoint. Rather than kind of doing incremental smaller deals, we just jumped in and started doing these giant deals that obviously we had to find other partners for. And so we learned a lot really, really fast. Again, like this kind of rapid, lots of lessons that we learned from those partners. And that was kind of that phase. And then we, decided that, felt like we had kind of met what we wanted to do in the student space and then kind of turned back towards more conventional multifamily.
Those were Sterling and Cardinal, or what were the?
Yeah, Sterling, Frisco, the Cardinal. Yes. And then there was a couple other deals like next to the Cardinal. I forget what it's called now, but that we had basically teed up, but ultimately didn't develop on our own.
I mean, those are big projects.
Yeah.
Now I can't imagine.
Yes.
Back then.
One of the most stressful days of my life was the day that we opened, or the day before we opened the Cardinal. And with each deal that we did, we took we had more responsibility, we had more experience, and therefore we took more responsibility. And the Cardinal was much more of a true JV, even though we did not have anywhere near the balance sheet to execute that ourselves. We, we had a really great partner who allowed us to be, very much active in the development, and we did property management on our own for that deal, which is the first time that we had been the property manager for a pure student project. And it was wild. It was 407. I still remember the exact stats. It was 471 beds, and every one of them was leased, 100% occupied on move-in day. And we couldn't get the fire marshal, and this is nothing against, this was, there's real issues, and we were having trouble getting just small details, but important details, signed off. And I mean, we literally had a line out the door at 7:00, in the morning on move-in day, and no certificate of occupancy. And it was the most stressful thing I've ever done in my life. Ultimately, we pulled it off and got people moved in, but it was crazy. And I haven't done any student since.
It's crazy. And y'all managed did you manage Sterling too, or y'all?
No,
okay.
No, we did not.
Okay.
No, the partner that it was a national student developer that executed on that. Yeah.
It's crazy. Those are big deals.
Yeah.
I can't imagine back then too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so was that the moment where it was like, hey, like let's take a step back?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was like 3 summers in a row. I didn't have any vacation. I wouldn't spend, I didn't have kids at the time, or maybe I had a couple of small kids. And it was just like, this is rough,
Yeah.
And so, it was kind of a step back, and it's like, okay, what do we really want to do? And I'm still really proud of the fact that we put students, right, where they need to be, right next to campus and in downtown. But it was hard, and there was other people beginning to, meet that market as well, and kind of wanted to get back to, honestly, like that original eco thesis, which is there's a bunch of young professionals, others too, but young professionals that are seeking a better place to live. What we call rent by choice, like for whatever reason, they would prefer to rent in this time period. And that may be because they're just moving here. That may be because whatever reason. And there just wasn't product that would, there's still not near enough product even to this day for folks that want to live in and around downtown. And so that's kind of, where we started focusing again.
Talk about the next project then. What was kind of post the student?
The first thing we did after the student deals was Uptown, up by the Razorback Cinema. And that entire project was whatever the word, I can't think of, but the thesis or the idea there was we needed somewhere that we could build that scale of housing. You can't, it's very hard, very expensive to buy dirt in downtown Fayetteville. Still is expensive. Back then it was expensive. There was no proof of concept other than eco that you could charge higher rents. And so we had to go somewhere where we could buy less expensive dirt and still build surface parking rather than structured parking, apartments. And everything that we had done, part of this was purely fate, part of it was our own choice. Everything that we had done to that point was practically right on the trail. And so we knew, like, okay, this trail thing, and this was whatever, 9-10 years ago. Actually, this would have been more like 11 years ago. So we could see, like, this trail thing has value. There's a transportation piece of it, but there's also a big recreation piece of it. And so if we were going to do something that was not in downtown, we felt like doing it on the trail was important. The other thing that we had discovered was in all of our apartments that were the young professionals, many of those young professionals had jobs in Benton County, but they wanted to live in Fayetteville for obvious reasons. And so we felt like building a project that was that was convenient for them to go north, but they still could access all the amenities of Fayetteville fairly easily. Was a good play, and ultimately, that's what we were able to do, was build a project that was easy to get in and out of on I-49, close enough to amenities, and obviously a different type of amenity than what you have downtown, but also right on the trail. So that was the next big thing. That was the first project that we did as a like pure GP, where we had capital, obviously outside capital, but no other developer. Nobody's, no other developer. It was just us. And so that was a huge lift. That was pretty much all consuming for about 3 years. We still had some other things going in downtown. We kind of always, the two things that we've always done historically is ground up multifamily or adaptive reuse multifamily or value add multifamily, but then also adaptive reuse projects downtown. And so, during that time, we were also doing some stuff on Church Street, where I think where Lulu is and Arcega's. But the main focus was that apartment project.
Talk about that project, because back then we both grew up here, but don't recall prior to whatever 2014-ish.
Yep.
There being mixed use stuff in Northwest Arkansas.
Yeah.
So was that the first? I mean, not to like put a stake in the ground, but like, did y'all have any benchmarks for that, or was it like, hey, we're taking an idea from a different market, we're bringing it here?
It was very much taking an idea from other markets. Through the recognition that ECO got, I got plugged into both the USGBC, but also ULI nationally, and started attending meetings and traveling and seeing projects all over the place. And so that's kind of to some degree where the Uptown concept came from, was like, okay, we know we need to build housing. We know we're not going to find 7 or 8 acres near downtown. Even if we could, we won't be able to afford it and make the numbers work. So we found that location that was on the trail, and it's surrounded by things, but it's certainly not, what I would call walkable or, certainly not a real mixed use environment. And so we felt like we need to do something to, give it a sense of place. And so that's, why we decided to do mixed use. It was crazy hard. We could barely get capital to pay attention to it. To this day, it's hard. I mean, that like, there's a lot of things we should have done differently with the retail there. But grand scheme of things, it was ultimately successful. But learn lots of lessons along the way, for sure.
What'd you learn from that one?
A few different things. I think it's really good to travel and to look at other markets and bring things that you learn from other markets or see in other markets, but also our market's unique, and I think you have to be really careful how much you extrapolate certain things. And, one thing I would say is, like, we learn really quickly that, people aren't going to drive behind a building to park. They want to, this, at the end of the day, this is still Arkansas, and some of this is beginning to change, but, people, they have a certain pattern and ways that they think about parking. And so that was a big, hard lesson, is a hard lesson still, that it's hard to retrain a consumer to do things. And it's one thing if they're in downtown, right? They're already expecting to have to look for parking. It's another thing when they're in a big box retail environment. So that's a big one, was, the siding of the commercial space, the way it's parked, vertical, what I call now vertical mixed use, where you actually stack the apartments on top, is very difficult, except for in certain urban markets. If I had it all to do over again, we would have still done commercial, but we would have had it in a separate building. Something else we learned on the apartment side, we designed that. There's this book called Happy City that I don't remember when it was written. That's probably been at least a decade. And there's really interesting kind of social, research, but this guy, Christopher, oh gosh, what's his name? I think Charles Montgomery. And he lived in Vancouver, and he, if you know anything about architecture of Vancouver, there's this thing called Vancouverism, and they have these unbelievable blocks, and you have to build basically 2 or 3 stories of the street. So there's all these townhomes on the street, but then all those things are done that way because then they have high rises in the middle, and there's these huge high rises, and of course the high rises are more expensive than the townhomes. So this guy worked his way up, moved out of a townhome into a high rise, and lived in this high rise condo, and began to realize he found himself looking down from his high rise condo at the street life and his former friends that are on their front porches or roof decks on these townhomes, and began like asking these questions like, well, why is there so much more life there? And long story short, because I'm not going to do the book justice, but one of the takeaways he started, looking into and researching was that when you live in a building, and this could be for an office building or a home, I think, these like number of interactions determine like social outcomes, particularly meaning if there are 100 people that live in this condo building and they all use the same 2 or 3 elevators, there are not like you don't see the same person enough to then begin to feel comfortable engaging with them, and you're not going to remember 100 people's names, versus if you live in a certain type of building where there's only 2 or 3 neighbors or whatever, and he ended up with this, his ideal thing is 12. If you have no more than 12 people that are kind of using your entrance and this little shared common space, then you're much more likely to build these social ties, and so we began to apply some of that. I mean, it was really, first draft, and on purpose separated that project into what was kind of 3 mini 100 unit projects with entries that only served a smaller number of people and all of that. And a lot of it worked out really good. One thing that I learned, though, is I think in Northwest Arkansas, and there's certainly exceptions to this depending upon location, but big projects like that, that one was 308 units, not counting the commercial. You have to have a lot of leasing velocity. You have to have a lot of velocity of leasing to get that thing full. Mm. And if you don't, then all of a sudden 12 months in and you're leasing against yourself because people are moving out, and it's this big thing in the industry. Well, in a lot of markets, big markets, Dallas, whatever, you got so many people moving in, moving around, not a big deal. I think in Northwest Arkansas, and I think there's other examples as you look around Northwest Arkansas, where people have built these much bigger complexes, particularly if they're reaching for, top of the market. And they kind of take scale from other markets that have way more job growth than we have. We have great percentage job growth, but whole number job growth, and apply it to Northwest Arkansas, and then find out the hard way that, hey, it's really hard, to move 25 or 30 people every month, in. Mm-hmm. And so that was a turning point for us, and part of it is the sheer, leasing, the demographics and the leasing effort. Part of it is also scale and community, that 150 unit or 100 unit or an 80 unit project, while you still have many of the same, challenges, entitlement, design, a lot of it takes the same amount, whether there's 100 of them or 300 of them. From a placemaking, community, and leasing perspective, we really like a medium scale instead. And everything that we've done since then, practically, I think has been, well, not practically, everything has been in that medium scale of 100, 150 units, big enough that you can, still have some economy of scale, big enough that you can still have, hopefully, pretty efficient operations, mm-hmm. but small enough that it just doesn't feel like you're in a complex. Because I don't think anybody really wants to live in a complex, right? They want to live in a neighborhood.
It's cool.
Okay, so what was the team size then? Was it still pretty? I mean, you and Seth and just a couple others, or was
back then? Back then there really was not a development team. The development team was me and Hope, who's still working for us, was kind of my right hand, and then our property management team. So we had a property management team, but we had no development team. Seth was the real estate guy, and I was the development guy, and with an assistant basically. And then we really started. I think the first hire on the development team would have been like 2017 or 2018.
Okay. And where did y'all go from there, from that project there? Was it, hey, we're gonna go do 2 of these next year, or we're gonna how quickly does that kind of scale up?
The next thing we did would have been of scale. The next apartment project of scale would have been Brick Avenue in Bentonville. And so we really took a lot of what we learned from Uptown, and it was I wouldn't say rinse and repeat, because nothing we do is rinse and repeat, but it was as much of that as we've ever done. Of we scaled the project down just slightly, but took a lot of the same a lot of the same momentum, a lot of the same consultants, and a lot of the same strategy of how do we build a place that feels good, is walkable, is community focused, feels urban, but is actually surface park apartment buildings, arranged and landscaped in a way that it feels like or is a neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And so we went and did that. Was the next big project that would have opened in 2019. And at the same time, we were beginning to work on our Markham Hill project in the early stages of acquisition and entitlement. And then about that same time would have been when we started pursuing this piece of real estate in 2019, I believe, and started planning South Yard.
And what would you tell someone who's like, getting into the space, how do you know if you're trying to do too much, or, hey, like you're saying earlier, we didn't say we as you and the team and you and Seth, whenever you were jumping in the student stuff at the beginning, mm-hmm. It was like, hey, we're just figuring it out. And we just took a big jump and it was good. But how do you know what's right there?
Yeah, I don't know. How about that for an answer? I think one really important thing, no matter what, is, don't be overconfident, and understand what you know and understand what you don't know. And, we've always been of the mind that, finding good partners and consultants that do have experience, and partner could be with a capital P or a lowercase p, advisors, capital, capital sources, whatever it is that have experience. I would never want to go, do a project that we didn't have deep experience on without, designers, mm-hmm. capital providers, or consultants that don't have experience in that space. And so certainly we've been able to, do different things, and, we're doing much more than just pure multifamily now. But try to always do it with, really good advisors and a lot of collaboration. Mm-hmm. That's the thing, a lot of collaboration, which takes time, but yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. But, yeah, when you look at most of what we do, still falls back into those 2 big buckets that I talked about. It's multifamily, and it's adaptive reuse, mm-hmm. or creative commercial space. And, the vast majority of the square footage in dollars is in the multifamily space, which we understand deeply. We got into this project and Markham Hospitality, which is now Stonebreaker, at a extremely unfortunate time, 2020 and COVID. And so, we had bit off, we were planning 30,000 feet here, of food and beverage and a hotel, when nobody was going out to eat and nobody was staying in a hotel. And so obviously we slowed some things down and paused. And, mm-hmm. Maybe that's part of it too, is like knowing when to, know when to slow down or know when to say no. And that's not always easy. When you're, especially when you're working in we're working in our hometown and places that we love, and, we want to do cool stuff, but also have to be careful that you don't get into something that you don't really have expertise in.
Yeah.
Let's keep diving a little bit deeper into the business side of it, and then we can go back to some of these projects. So from the business perspective, how do y'all look at your timeline? Are y'all a buy and hold? Is that kind of the buy, hold, manage? Or have y'all flipped out any of these properties? How do you guys view that? What's your thesis, your investment thesis?
So early days, up until so Eco we have managed to hold on to. A lot of what happened from Eco leading up to, say, Brick Avenue, we have sold out of, with the exception of some of this adaptive reuse commercial downtown stuff. And that's really for two reasons. One, we probably, in many cases, we didn't have a choice because we were the developer, but the capital provider would call that shot, for the most part. And or because we needed to build our capital ourselves, and so obviously it takes cash and it takes a balance sheet to do these types of projects. And so there's definitely a series, there, either because of the capital provider or in a lot of the student stuff, we had a JV partner. It was, they were taking way more risk than we were, post entitlement. And so, we exited a bunch of stuff, kind of in that decade, that first big decade. But our general philosophy is to develop it and hold it and operate it. We operate the multifamily on our own. We outsource typically the commercial property management to somebody that can do that better than us. But yeah, I mean, the general investment strategy or business strategy is to design and build these places that are hard to replace, places that have higher barriers to entry, places that make a difference in our community and people are attracted to for reasons, other than just because they're the new shiny thing. And we think that we can create a lot of value over time, both for the community and for ourselves. And it's not always the case. And, sometimes you got to sell things to churn capital and be able to invest in new things. But the general desire and strategy is always to build, stabilize, and put permanent financing on it that allows us to hold it for the long term.
So the capital partners that you work with have to be okay with that long term thesis.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we've had all kinds of different capital partners, and learned lots of lessons. We've worked with, big name private equity firms that even though some of that was really hard, just because, we were young and learning, and when you're doing that with a group that has a ton of experience, that can be difficult. But I wouldn't trade it for anything because we learned so much, learn systems and tools and, how to do things. And, now luckily, we're in a position that for the most part, we get to, I'm not going to say we get to choose our capital partners. That's maybe a little too wishful thinking, but, to a large degree, we kind of do, and that's really important. It's not just about who's going to give you the most money or who's going to, it's really about, it goes back to the values thing from the very beginning, right? I mean, we could have an amazing internal culture, but in our business, if we then went and had capital partners that, or whatever consultants, it could be any, it could be, design consultants, or it could be financing consultants, it could be capital partners. If they're not aligned with what we're doing, then it'd be really hard to do what we want to do over the long term. And so that is a huge part of how we think about deals and put deals together now is partners that share values. And it's not that every capital partner has to be totally aligned with everything, all of our values or deep sustainability or health, but they have to understand that's who we are, and they have to be willing to, invest in a deal and in a structure that allows us to operate that way. And we found, that having local, and like-minded capital is kind of the best of all worlds, and it's people that we, that are not just, they're not just a number, in your phone or on the screen, but it's people that you actually, can collaborate with, and they bring value other than just the capital.
Talk about that a little more. I mean, was that harder to find 15 years ago? Has that gotten finding local capital? Has that been easier as time has gone on? I mean, part of it's obviously if you're having success, more people want to invest in your deals locally, but just generally the area, the growth.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say yes on several different levels there. I mean, 10 or 15 years ago, we were very much blazing a trail. And whether that be the type of projects that we're doing, the locations that we're doing, whether that be us talking about, sustainability or indoor air quality. I mean, there's a lot of these things that, especially pre-COVID, people didn't have any idea what we're talking about, and now, both as the market has moved that way generally, and then accelerated by things like COVID and people understanding that indoor health is, that your indoor environment and your outdoor environment really affects your health. So part of it's just awareness and the market moving a certain direction. So that's, thinking about our value system and finding capital that understands, is willing to invest alongside that, or even really is on board with it is much easier. Generally, there's just more capital sources, right? There's more capital sources, like I said before. I mean, when we did our first what I would say institutional scale deal with an institutional partner, I mean, they had never done a deal in Northwest Arkansas before. It was extremely hard just to get them to show up and then convince them that it was worth it. Now there's all kinds of capital here from all over the place. And I think that's great. But when we have the opportunity, we would still prefer to use local capital sources. Mm-hmm. And I think that is also much more readily available. Lots of developers, do, and there's a lot to be said for this, kind of friends and family, kind of self-syndicated, fancy word that I didn't know what it meant for a long time, self-syndicated deals, and that's great. But now we have local offices and local teams and funds that can come alongside you as well and take a lot of that burden, off of you. And we found, we really like to be able to work that way.
That's good.
Talk about, so I mean, I want to talk about here South Yard. This is my absolute favorite project that y'all have done. But you talked, I think you said 2017 when you really started to build the team. Why did you choose to do that? And I think there's when people who aren't in this industry, so they understand, it's like there's pressure on doing projects when you've got a payroll to hit. It's like, hey, there's, the business model is making money through all these projects are big. There's fees that are related that allow you to pay payroll.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you balance hiring too many, too little?
That's a great question. And it's a really difficult task. We have chosen to invest, overinvest is probably not the right word, but we've chosen to choose to spend money to acquire good talent, to keep good talent around, even when, the OpCo piece of that doesn't make sense in the short term. Just because, A, it's necessary, and B, it's what makes the investment make sense.
Yeah.
We're not developers for developer fees.
Mm-hmm.
We're not a fee-based development company that's developing things for other people. Although as we grow, that is something that we, have begun to consider and or do for folks because we have the capacity and expertise to do that. but the vast majority of our work is really we're our own client, essentially. Of course, we have capital partners too, but so yeah, it's the thing in anybody that's been around the development industry, particularly if you start looking at outside shops and bigger companies outside of this area, like that's the concern or the fear or whatever is like you get so big and then you have all this payroll, and it's a real thing. It's hard to manage because deal flow is not, especially at kind of the scale that we're at. Like we may look big, but at the end of the day, we're 13, 15 people in our kind of core team, not counting our property management and, admin teams. And so that's a pretty hefty, whatever the word is, pretty hefty payroll. But we're in a market and we're highly selective about what we do. And as we can work on a deal for 2-3 years, sometimes longer, before we ever see $1 of income. And so, it's something that we're constantly working on having the right balance of. So I don't have a great answer as to like how to do it, but it's a constant thing. It's a constant thing of making sure that we've got the best talent, we've got enough capacity, but we're not overdoing it either because that deal flow, is, and there's things that happen completely outside of your control. You may be working on a deal that for whatever reason doesn't work out. You got an entitlement issue, you got an environmental issue, you've got, or something turns in the market like COVID. We were gearing up to do several things, including this project, and just kind of had to put it on the shelf for a while. And that, that sucked. So you've got to be smart, from a capital allocation perspective too, that, we're not just looking for every deal we can possibly do and stretching ourselves too thin. We got to make sure that we've got the capital to support our own team and our own growth.
Before we dive into South Yard, I want you to touch a little more on Brick Avenue, because it seems like every project we've talked about is within like a couple mile radius here in Fayetteville. And so what was the vision for going up north? Was that risky, scary at the time, or did y'all feel pretty confident in the knowledge that you'd gain in the Uptown project? Like how did that feel back then?
No, it really, to be honest, it didn't really feel risky. I mean, we were, I think, the first to market with multifamily of any scale there. So we felt like, A, it was our core business. B, it was in a strategic location. We did not know the campus was going to be expanding there. So that was pure luck. I mean, seriously, pure luck. What we did was kind of like what we did with Uptown was, you look at, okay, like in order to make a deal like this work, we need a certain size piece of dirt. We're not going to be able to pay, whatever crazy number it would be to put that, on Main and Main. But where do we put it that's clearly still walkable to downtown, still easy to access via car? And we zeroed in on that location, and that piece of it worked out. But yeah, I mean, I think we felt like we knew there was demand for, of course that was, that would have been we opened in 2019. So I guess it was probably 2016-ish when we started working on that project. And while it clearly isn't what it is today, I mean, downtown Bentonville was beginning to turn. Obviously there's a sense of place there, and a reason for people to want to live downtown. And so I don't think that ever really felt too speculative. Like happens to us many times, there was no clear comp that we could point to. Like you have to point to like, well, here's a 4-plex or a 6-plex or whatever, and we're trying to do that at a 252 unit scale. I mean, it worked out well. Still own and operate that piece as well. And, probably will for a really long time. But yeah, I think because it was so squarely in our wheelhouse, and, we felt fairly confident in what downtown Bentonville would be, and continue to be, that one, I feel like that one was kind of right down the middle of the fairway for us. Yeah. and we had property management experience in Benton County, even though we didn't have development experience. And so it wasn't like we were, we still understood the market.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, as far as, well, let's talk about this first, but I want to talk about like how you select sites now. And like, I imagine, I mean, you're probably getting called on a bunch of things now. Hey, take a look at this, take a look at this. You're not developing any outside of Northwest Arkansas, correct? Yeah. Still feel like there's plenty of things to do here.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I mean, we're constantly having, it is fairly regular that we'll have a conversation about a project outside of Northwest Arkansas. Had one last week, with a group that we like a lot. And there will be a time where we will go partner with someone else in another market, with a like-minded developer or capital partner or land partner. But we haven't done it yet. There's so much opportunity here. Certainly, there are way more people doing multifamily now, to some degree, the type of multifamily that we do, in Northwest Arkansas than there used to be. We kind of were a lone wolf for a long time, and now we're definitely not a lone wolf. Our deal is we want to build where there is, a sense of community, close to jobs, close to entertainment activities. It's all the things, right? I mean, used to people didn't understand that necessarily in this market, but now I think everybody understands, it's harder to find those sites. The due diligence, everything about it is harder. The good part of that is that some people, either don't want to or don't have the ability or the expertise, to do that. And I probably said this earlier, but a lesson that I learned earlier, that's kind of a fundamental real estate term, is barriers to entry. And if you look across practically everything that we've done, save maybe like Uptown in Fayetteville, pretty high barriers to entry to get into places that we're in. And whether that be, like, site cost related or whatever it may be. But we've been able to find those sites, and in many cases assemble multiple parcels, into bigger sites. And we're willing to, when it makes sense and where it's appropriate, to do mixed use projects like South Yard. I mean, this is a very complicated, very mixed use project that a lot of people wouldn't bite off.
Yeah. Talk about this deal. Like when you and or Seth, when you're looking at it for the first time,
yep.
Besides the location, I guess talk about the location too, but like what made you love the site, see the potential in the site, and then think hotel, food and beverage, apartments, everything?
Yeah. So really this site started simply looking for places to build like that kind of medium scale multifamily, started off that way. We knew we wanted to be on or very near the trail. We want to be, near downtown Fayetteville, near jobs, near university. So where are the places that, we can find land that fits that bill? And this opportunity it was on the market, even though it wasn't really on the local market that the co-op, was looking to sell, and because they already planning to move. And so, we kind of swooped in and started looking at this. At first, the concept was not adaptive reuse. At first, it was just like, hey, they've got a pretty nice piece of parcel and pretty nice piece of dirt. Would make great multifamily dirt. It's on a corner that provides lots of visibility. So, just kind of checked all the boxes. And then as we started understanding these buildings, we started looking at it and having this conversation. That's like, oh my goodness, it's like, it's not a lot on the surface when you look at these things, but, and this was, to pause for a second. I mentioned ULI earlier. So in like 2013, I started going to the ULI national meetings and got plugged into one of the ways that ULI is organized is called product councils. And so there's just groups, you have these small or maybe medium scale groups. They get together and they're called product councils because a lot of them are organized by like what it is you work on, whether that be office or industrial or whatever. Mm-hmm. I got plugged into what's called the redevelopment and reuse council. And so, lots of different use cases, lots of different, ways that the space gets used, but everybody in this council does adaptive reuse stuff. And so for years and years, I would go twice a year, sometimes more. And a big part of what we do is tour projects in other cities. And, so I had been exposed to a lot of adaptive reuse stuff, and always like every year, or every spring, every fall, I'd go do that. And I'd get so inspired, and then I'd come back and I'd be like, well, we don't have any giant, brick warehouses. We don't Fayetteville and Northwest Arkansas generally, we grew in the era of big box. We don't have a lot of old, particularly, industrial or commercial building stock. And so it was always just kind of like, I wish I could do that in Fayetteville, but we don't have those types of buildings. And so all of that kind of started marinating, and we're looking at these buildings and we're like, there's some interesting things. There's board form concrete, which we can never afford to build on our new projects, which we really like. And we just started kind of just brainstorming about, what if, could this be reused? The geometry is crazy weird and all this stuff. And so we just started kind of, well, let's work a site plan where we keep this and let's see what happens. And so it just really was just back to our, very collaborative, very iterative design process. And because of, the fact that we had success off the square with our adaptive use projects there, felt like there was an opportunity here. And so that was really kind of the initial piece was these buildings were interesting while, not big, tall, beautiful brick warehouses. There was some like real embodied culture here. Like this is, there's, the ag industry and farmers co-op meant a lot to a lot of people. And this was a place where people gathered and connected. And there was, we felt like there was something that we could pull out of that and find a way to kind of, reuse and breathe new life into these. So we started exploring that. We hired a firm that I had been exposed to from other projects out of Austin that had done a bunch of this cool stuff to then collaborate with Modus. And, that just kind of went from there. The hotel was not in the original plan. We had been working on some other things and had some conversations about hotel opportunities. And really just started kind of playing with it. And part of it was like, okay, well, what's the highest and best use for this site? And how can we maximize, how can we make the commercial successful? What's needed in Fayetteville that didn't exist and felt like, there hadn't been a new hotel built in Fayetteville in a long, long time. And felt like even though, this was in some ways a bit of an odd spot, to put it, that it could work. And so we just kind of started having some, again, collaborative. We brought in somebody that, not from here, but has a lot of hotel experience and to kind of advise us and help us think and work through it. Just kind of kept designing and scheming it until we found something that we thought works. Moxie specifically, we were looking for, we felt like, we knew this wasn't going to be, didn't feel like it needed to be, sort of like high end, hotel, but we definitely wanted it to be, we wanted to be true to the site, true to Fayetteville, and Moxie, we felt like was a really good fit, not only for South Yard, but for Fayetteville generally. It also just physically made a ton of sense because small format rooms, not a lot of public space. We knew that we wanted to figure out something cool to do with the ground floor. Yeah. So it all just kind of made sense. There's no Marriott product in the core of Fayetteville. And so, all those stars just kind of aligned, even though it was a little bit difficult on the front end to convince Moxie to convince Marriott to let us put a Moxie in an old farmers co-op in Arkansas. Because at the time, pretty much everything was like, New York,
Yeah.
Well, like all down, like pure like downtown core locations.
And talk about a project like this with so many different uses. Is the capital partners the same for all of that?
Yeah.
And is that common or uncommon? I mean, what's
I would in a project like I mean, I don't know that I have enough frame of reference to tell you whether it's common for other people or not. I can tell you it's common for us. I mean, we looked at this from the beginning as, you know, one project, one capital, one fund. For a couple of reasons. Partially because this is an opportunity zone, so it made sense to raise a specific fund, and we did that for this project. But also because we knew, like, okay, all these things work together. There are going to be conflicts between them, and we want the capital to be aligned to make everything successful. I don't want the you know, retail or restaurant investor complaining about something or whatever. While there's still a lot to manage there, no matter what, we want everybody to be aligned economically to make everything, you know, function as well as it can, and drive success across all the different uses. And so that's the way we approached it. Each phase or each project is independent. You know, it's independent, you know, entities and independent debt, but same investment fund.
Okay.
That way, you know, again, and then that way the interests are aligned to make the South Yard as a whole as successful as possible, and not just trying to maximize one independent piece of it.
And talk about the food tenants that y'all recruited early on. I mean, how long was the courting process for that? I mean, there's some pretty big names that just kind of talk about that.
Kind of a mixed bag. I mean, some of them, you know, we, you know, started targeting and recruiting, you know, way early on. Others came to us. You know, others kind of came through relationship. So, I mean, that, no question, like that's, I don't know. I mean, the hotel piece is hard too, but I mean, food and beverage and, you know, this type of creative commercial is super hard, especially when, you know, we clearly spent a lot of money on this space. Yeah. And so, you know, we got to, you know, nobody is going to retire from the commercial investment here, but it's still got to make sense. It's got to make financial sense. And so, you know, it's a higher price point, which requires someone that can really generate the revenue and really perform. And, you know, we're in a market where there's not a ton of, you know, deep F&B, you know, operational experience. And I think our market, and Cameron, you know this better than I, but I think our market, much like it has in other things, like there was a time period in multifamily where like people looked at us, you know, like we were completely nuts that we thought we were going to get $1,000 for a 1-bedroom apartment, you know? And now like that, you know, it's just ubiquitous, right? I mean, it's just the assumption. And I think kind of the same thing is happening in food and beverage. Like you can go to many peer markets and like $30, $40 a square foot. Like that's just normal. And it's not like people there are eating out more than are eating here. It's just, you know, it's either a shift in the market perception and reality, and or more, you know, operators that are able to drive more profit, you know, bottom line profit. And so that's been a huge challenge here, no question. And you know, we've already had, you know, a casualty from a concept that, you know, on the surface looked like it was going to be a complete slam dunk. And yet, you know, they were the first one out. So lots of lessons, and I'm sure we'll continue to learn lessons here. But I think that's just kind of part of, you know, part of this type of commercial and F&B and investment. And again, one of the things that's been a huge blessing for me is my general interactions, general experience with ULI groups, whether that be national ULI or we've had really close relationship with a lot of folks in Oklahoma, particularly Oklahoma City ULI, who have done a lot of this kind of stuff too. And so we've been able to, you know, relationships and resources, you know, just to learn and how to, you know, make these things work. And the bottom line is, you know, anybody I think that's in this space that has this type of commercial, creative F&B, like you're going to be a partner with your tenant. You just are. Yeah. Like, are you formally a partner or not? Doesn't matter. Like, you got to work together, and we're still, we certainly have a ways to go in doing that, but that's the way we try to approach it. Is it's not just like they're a tenant in some building that we don't have to think about. Like, they're literally our neighbor here, of course, but also we think of them as a partner because we need to help each other be successful.
Why do you think that one didn't work? Because I'm the same as you. I mean, I remember going to Memphis.
Yeah.
That's one of the core places.
Yeah. I think mostly execution. I don't think that they executed well here locally. That's part of it. I also think that they overestimated their brand reach, and that certain, very well known name recognition in parts of the state for sure, but also Fayetteville and a lot of the population of Fayetteville don't know anything about Memphis barbecue. Yeah. And actually, places like Wright's that people just love, it's a totally different style. Mm-hmm. And so I think it was partially style, but partially style, largely execution. And I say execution everywhere from the space to the food to the service. I think to some degree, it's kind of the classic example of like restaurant gets investment, expands beyond its home territory, and doesn't quite work right. Mm-hmm. And there's, it's a combination of things.
Well, I want you to talk about Markham. But I mean, I think it's important for people to know, like, I mean, y'all have, done things in downtown Rogers, downtown Bentonville, and all over Fayetteville. I mean, you've got a big reach kind of across the whole market. Talk about what's going on in Markham Hill, and then I want to kind of shift into the future and kind of maybe what's next.
Yeah. I mean, so Markham, is kind of one of these, it was total, legacy project. I mean, never would have thought we would have bought 144 acres, right next to the university. It's going to be a long-term, labor of love up there. But the goal is, to build the next great neighborhood in Fayetteville. And that's a combination of single family homes, and it's townhomes, and it's cottages, and it'll probably even some small scale apartments. And then of course, Stonebreaker, the hospitality piece. And we in some ways we kind of did things backwards, and that's partially because there was already physical assets there. But, we kind of built the amenity, before the neighborhood's there. And, we're learning lessons up there right now, every day, and so if you don't know what Stonebreaker is, please go. If you've already been and you didn't have a great experience, let me know and go back again. But we're deep in the hospitality business there. I mean, we are the restaurateurs, right? I mean, we don't operate it. We have an operating company, but we are the owner. But yeah, I mean, the big picture there is all of the things that we have put into our projects over the years, from a values perspective. And again, the things that I talked about earlier, a focus on place and the spaces between the buildings, a focus on health. And for us, like, health is not, I mean, there's indoor air quality, but boy, it's way more than that too. I mean, like, deep building science stuff that affects health, it affects durability and longevity. It affects, obviously energy efficiency and sustainability. And so the vision there has always been, well, it's not only people that live in apartments that are going to care about those things. And, some of us are really lucky to get to live in historic neighborhoods that were built, in a certain way. And the reality is most of the neighborhoods today are not built that way. And there's very little sense of community, and many of the homes are not, they're built for cost, not built for, for health or for wellness or for community. And so our vision there is we're going to do that. We're going to build really high quality homes. And when I say home, again, I'm not boxing that into just a detached single family, although that will be the majority of it. And we feel like there's a market for folks that care more about that quality of product than they do about necessarily just the square footage or how many garage bays you have or how big your lot is, because up there, we're going to be forever surrounded by 100 acres of woods and mountain bike trails, and there's about a 5 acre park right in the middle of on top of the hill in the neighborhood that'll always be there. And so giving what we think is kind of the best of both worlds of high quality physical home product, but access to nature, access to shared green spaces, obviously access to hospitality and restaurant and club, but also right next to the university and right next to downtown, which is just such a rare thing, not only for Northwest Arkansas, it's just kind of a very rare thing, period. Yeah. We are, we built a few homes there last year that are kind of what we call it phase one. It's really just some things that are on the way up to the top of the mountain. And just a few weeks ago, we started the first phase of homes and townhomes that are on top of the hill. So if you drive past Stonebreaker, you'll see some construction that's happening there. So later this year, we'll have townhomes and some single family homes for sale up there for the first time.
That's
so
awesome.
Super pumped about it. And we're about to have a kind of brand launch where we're going to, a lot more information will be coming about that.
Are those like specs, or is there opportunity for custom homes, or what's the?
There's some opportunity for custom homes. So a couple of ways I would answer that. Like, yes, what we're building right now is specs. We do have some lots that we've set aside that we're calling custom lots that we would sell. There's not very many of them, but there are some that we would sell. And then, of course, there'd be a process of architectural review. And then the real end goal up there is that, we will have the opportunity to, sit down with you, figure out what it is that you're looking for, and help, kind of semi-customize a plan that we can work with, and then build it for you.
That's pretty cool.
Combination of spec and what we would call, semi-custom, or maybe that's not the right way, but I mean, it's like a lot of not national, but a lot of, builders would do that are building neighborhoods is, we'll have some core plans that can be customized, to some degree. And so, we'll be able to do that over time. But right now what's happening is some specs and then a few opportunities for custom home lots.
And is this the first time in Specialized history y'all are doing like homes, single family homes, or have y'all done some of that before? And this isn't.
So way back in the Mikasa days, we did some home building and a lot of consulting with home builders on single family. That's like, apples and kiwis. I don't know, like very, very, very different.
Yeah.
But yeah, so last year we built those homes right there on Markham. And so, yeah, this is the first time that we're both the builder and the developer on that project.
And I'm just thinking, so for the future now, like where we're headed, what are the biggest headwinds first? What are the biggest challenges for you for Specialized right now today? Then I want to talk about like what the goal is.
Sure. Headwind wise right now, even though Northwest Arkansas generally is still a great market, it is a tough environment. Construction costs are still very high, and they're not going to go down. Interest rates are still high. They're not quite as high as they were last year, but they're still high. And I'm not sure if they're going to go down anytime soon. But yet on the demand side, we're in a weaker market than we've seen in a really long time. Part of that is due to kind of national trends, and part of that is due to in some cases we've delivered, probably more so on the multi than the single family, a lot of product. And I say we, I don't mean us, I mean the market, particularly in Benton County. And so, you don't see it near as much in Fayetteville, but if you go to Benton County and you're looking for an apartment for rent, you'll very quickly find out that you can get, multiple months free of rent. Well, we haven't seen that in a long, long time. And so we're in an interesting environment where interest isn't getting any cheaper, construction isn't getting any cheaper, but yet rent growth is stagnant or in some cases even negative in certain submarkets. And so that's going to be really tough to underwrite new deals. So I think you're going to see, it's already been happening for the last year or two, but I think we'll see continued, fewer new starts, particularly on the multifamily side in certain submarkets. And so, even though the types of projects that we do and the places that we do them are different than the vast majority of that project, still the macro, the macroeconomics of rents and rent growth will affect our ability to underwrite. So that's the hardest thing that we're dealing with right now is just we're in a different market than we've seen in a long time when it comes to rent and rent growth. And there's some good to that because there was some crazy rent growth, but it makes projects more challenging, to get going. And I think we will continue to see, we haven't seen it like a lot of the country has seen it, but there are, I don't know if distress is the right, maybe a little bit too strong of a word, but there are definitely deals, that are having to be repositioned, recapitalized. And so there's a lot of opportunity out there for capital other than just new construction that, may have more opportunity and or less risk. And so I think you'll see that that's going to make the multifamily and kind of larger scale projects a little bit harder, over the coming years.
And for the coming years, like, do you have a focus like geographically for where y'all are trying to be predominantly?
I mean, pretty much we're going to be focused in our 4 major downtowns. I mean, the way I think about it is we either want to be, or not want, we're either going to be building where there's already a meaningful place, or we're going to be building at the scale that we can create a meaningful place. And so, or the way that we talk about it is like, we want to, let's see, how do I say that? It's been a minute since I've said it, well, I can't think of the way I talk about the neighborhoods, but, I mean, that's kind of our MO is like, we want to be building in a great neighborhood, or we're going to be creating a great neighborhood. Creating a great neighborhood is actually, I mean, that's a whole different scale. It's a whole different, set of risks and time frames. But pretty much, I think everything you'll see that we're working on is either going to be in one of our existing downtowns, or it's going to be in a project the scale of Markham or the scale of Drake Farms, where we're creating a new neighborhood. And things to do besides just a place to live.
And talk about like what I mean. Obviously, Drake is coming. Maybe that's the one to talk about. But maybe something that people don't know that's coming online, and then maybe fill in some details on what's going on with Drake.
I mean, Drake's definitely the main thing I would be thinking about and talking about. I mean, we haven't really gone public with that project either. That will be happening soon. But I mean, we will have apartments for rent in Drake, and people by the end of the summer will be living there, which, that kind of snuck up on us. I mean, we've been working on that project for a long time, but, the first phase is fully under construction. And if you drive up Gregg, you can't miss it. That is kind of, I shouldn't say classic, but a good example of the types of things that we'll be working on, where we have apartment construction, we have townhome construction, all in a really strategic location, both trail side, but also next to the second largest employer, and right next to the second largest employer in the county, and just north of the university, which of course is the first largest. So located really close to jobs, located easily accessible to I-49, crazy easily accessible to I-49, but yet still in the heart, right at what we're going to call the front porch of Fayetteville, super visible. And we're building about 22,000 square feet of restaurant and creative office there. that'll be opening as well, or will be finished construction around the end of the year, and some fun things coming there. And that project's just gonna, knock on wood, hopefully it's just gonna keep going. We're already starting the second phase of infrastructure, and there's going to be all different types of housing. There'll be obviously a lot of apartments, townhomes, but also single family and some cottage, office space, medical office space, and also retail and commercial space. The way I talk about that project, it'll take more than 1 decade and hopefully less than 2.
What a long-term outlook. That's amazing.
That's awesome.
People need to hear that.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to kind of start wrapping up. Was there anything? Sure. So, I mean, this conversation has been great. In wrapping up here, there's a couple questions we ask every guest at the end. Mm-hmm. And I think more in particular, we asked why build a business in Northwest Arkansas, but why keep developing in Northwest Arkansas?
Yeah.
Why the just strategic focus on the 4 main downtowns here?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. Well, I'll try to not be redundant, hopefully. I mean, why? I mean, there's a few answers. I mean, Northwest Arkansas is a really great place, to build business or to build real estate. We have some economic advantages, obviously with the combination of the job growth and the quality of life, and certainly, major anchors, including the University of Arkansas. For me, it's the combination of really great people, really great economic situation, better than most, economic, opportunity. But then also it's my home, right? I mean, I live here, and so I'm getting to invest and build and curate, the places that I'm going to call home, and hopefully the places that, friends and family are going to call home. And so, I know that there will be a time where we also, work other places with other people that think like we do about where they live. Mm-hmm. Sometimes there's challenges when you're working in your own home, and some people don't always agree that what you're doing is good work. But for the most part, it's really satisfying to get to make your own community better.
Man. And how do you define success?
Yeah. So success to me, I mean, there's a lot of layers to that, I think. But early in my career, I started reading Jim Collins, and he has this thing called a hedgehog concept, which has been, talked about and adapted different ways. And my version of that, or I shouldn't say my version of that, the version of that I use is, I like success to me is where the intersection of where my talents lie and where my passions are, the things that I enjoy doing, and then where value can be created. And that obviously can be economic value for some people, and that is certainly a factor for us. But it's also more than just economic value. I think it's where that could apply to nonprofit work. But at the end of the day, I think about that as if I'm serving, if I'm taking my talents, I'm taking things that I enjoy doing, and then I'm serving my community in a way that is creating value, whatever that means. Hopefully, usually that also comes with economic value. Like if I can get those 3 things to intersect, like I think that's success. That should be fulfilling, and it should be, fairly resilient, and a benefit.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, one of the things we do at the end of every episode is we kind of highlight the 3 main things that Cameron and I learned from you today. And as people listen to this, if they're growing a business, if they're working inside of a business, if they're trying to start a business, some of the things we think they'll learn too. And I think the clearest word that I would take as a summary from our time with you is purposeful. Mm-hmm. And I think you captured it really well. You just said it's really satisfying to make your community better. And that seems to be the purpose, of you as a co-founder, and then of Specialized. That's what y'all are trying to do. And I think just each place that I've been to, I haven't been to all your projects, but each place that I have been to, each project, even seeing the tenant selection in some of these, it's very purposeful. And I think every developer wants to say that. I think it's a lot harder to deliver on that than it is to say that. And so I think a lot of people can learn that from our time with you. And then I think the next one would be vision, and just having a vision for what you want for even people who live at your properties. And you talked a lot about the health stuff in the very beginning and kind of weaved it in throughout the episode. But there's just a clear vision to what you're trying to accomplish at each project. And I think it's, you come here and we're walking up and you can just see that there was a vision when you see the sign for South Yard, even coming off the road. Like there was a lot of vision that went into that. And just hearing you talk about, we both grew up here passing that co-op. It kind of looked abandoned and just gone for a while. And it takes a lot of vision to take something like that and turn it into what we're sitting at now. So really, really cool. And then I think the last piece is this word community. And I think, again, it's probably something every developer aspires to, but you look at some of the projects. I mean, Markham Hill, like hearing you talk through that, going up there, I mean, there's just a sense of community there, and it's just getting started. And so, I think those are some of the words that would really capture our time together. And we're thankful to learn from you, and thanks for spending some time with us this afternoon.
Thank you.
So,
thanks, man.
Thanks. Yeah.